everyone can read statistics. And I did. I read every statistic I could get my hand on. But until you really talk to the people who are in these types of relationships or were in these types of relationships, you won't understand, because I didn't know. So I spoke with over 20 women, survivors of any type of abuse. What was it? What was it like? What was the day like? And it was, sometimes that day was amazing. And that was the reason that they were in this relationship and they stayed in this relationship. And other days you're walking on eggshells, or other days, there's just so much complexity. I sat in on a homicide trial, domestic violence homicide trial.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. I sat in.
Welcome to Real Relationships, the place where the arts and relationship healing collides. I'm Cheryl Muir, I'm a relationship expert, and I'm also the host of Real Relationships. The reason I've created this series is to really interview directors, producers, writers, actors, performers about their projects that really focus on relationship healing. Film and theatre and television series, they're all a place that I've done a lot of my healing work in terms of my relationships, my relationship patterns, my sexuality, and so it became really, really important to bring this to the table and have these conversations. Our first guest is Chyna Robinson. Chyna is a really incredible director, writer and producer based in Texas in the United States, and she's the director, writer and producer of a film called No Ordinary Love, which we're going to be talking about. No Ordinary Love covers a really important topic about relationships, and we're going to cover what that is in our conversation. It's also done incredibly well on the film festival circuit. It has won Audience Choice Award and Best Screenplay at the Indie Memphis Film Festival. So I really hope you enjoy our conversation with Chyna Robinson.
Chyna, welcome to Real Relationships. I'm so happy to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me on. It's a pleasure.
Oh, it's an absolute honor to have you. You are the director, the writer, and the producer for a beautiful movie called No Ordinary Love, which we're going to be talking about today. But before we get started talking about your film, I'd love to talk about you and your journey, if that's okay. What is it about film that you find to be such a powerful medium, and what drew you to
it? Film is so powerful and effective, and it can make people cry, it can make people laugh, it can make people think, it can educate, all of those things. And so that's what I love about this particular art form. It's, you can sit down for 2 hours or more or less, and, it should have a really good impact on you one way or another. So that's what I love about it. What got me started, I actually started years ago with my dolls. I would write scripts and put on plays and things like that. And I would make my older sister and my best friend come in and act and memorize the script and, all of that. So I've been doing this forever. But I knew I wanted to do film when I went to the theater for the first time.
Yeah.
And I was watching The Golden Child. Eddie Murphy's The Golden Child. And people were just, in awe, and then they were laughing, and, they were just all focused on this screen. And I decided that's what I want to do.
So you saw the impact it had on people and the ways people were responding to it, and you understood how powerful it was and wanted to tell stories in that way. Yeah. There's a quote on your website that I'm going to just pick up that I saw earlier, and I thought it was so powerful and says so much about you as a producer and director and creative soul. And it says, "A director has to have the heart of a poet and the skin of an elephant." Yes. What does that quote mean to you?
For me, there are so many no's in this industry. So, you have to have tough skin. You have to say, okay, this is not for everybody. You have to say, not at this time. You have to say, okay, I have to be creative and create my own path and, build my own door to walk through. And so you have to have that tough skin, but, the heart of a writer and a director, I mean, you really have to be not only empathetic for your audience, but for your characters. When you're writing your characters, you have to feel what they're feeling and go through what they're going through. There's another quote that I always talk about, no tears in the writer, no tears in the reader. And I feel
I like that.
Yeah, I feel the same way. If I'm not crying or laughing or celebrating with these characters, the audience won't either.
So let's talk about No Ordinary Love. I've seen it. It's such a beautiful movie. It's so well done. It's so true to life. For those who have been living under a rock and don't know what the film's about, would you tell them a little bit about the plot and the premise of the movie?
Sure. What I say for my little short thing is it's like a love story gone terribly wrong. So basically, you're looking at the wife of a police officer, and she doesn't realize that she's in danger. And when she exposes her husband's secret to her pastor's wife, things get really shaky. And the pastor's wife and Tanya, the main character, they try to get out of their situations, which could very well turn deadly.
And why was it important for you to cover this topic? Because the themes are around, like you said, it's a love story gone horribly wrong. Why was it important to cover the dark side of relationships?
Well, I think we always, especially women, we want our happily ever after. And so and we're nurturers. So if we're in these toxic relationships, instead of leaving right off, or instead of always really paying attention to red flags and leaving at the sign of the first few red flags, we want to fix it. And there's so many levels in these types of relationships. There is love in like relationships that deal with intimate partner violence, and it's not always physical. The abuse is not always physical. So to realize you're in this type of relationship, I thought that was important for me to put on the screen. And then for these people, women, men, whomever that are in these relationships, we always ask, why don't you just leave?
Yeah.
If it's that bad, why not just leave? And so I wanted to answer that question in this movie. This is why. Because it's not all bad all the time. It's not very clear what's happening all the time. So I wanted to put some red flags in the movies, put some decisions and some consequences and things like that in the movie.
Yeah. And it's so beautifully done. And one of the things that I noticed about it was that, like you said, it's not all bad all the time. And it does start off slowly and a little bit subtly, to the point that these women are questioning, well, was it just that one time? Is it a pattern? And then it starts to escalate to the point that they're questioning, well, even if I did want to leave, how am I going to leave now? So the way that's all laid out is so beautiful. What was and so true to life, what was your process of researching that? Did you speak to victims of intimate partner violence? What was your process?
I absolutely did. That was, everyone can read statistics, and I did. I read every statistic I could get my hand on. But until you really talk to the people who are in these types of relationships or were in these types of relationships, you won't understand, because I didn't know. So I spoke with over 20 women, survivors of any type of abuse, and, just really pick their brain. What was it? What was it like? What was the day like? And it was, sometimes that day was amazing. And that was the reason that they were in this relationship and they stayed in this relationship. And other days you're walking on eggshells, or other days, there's just so much complexity.
Yeah.
And so I got into that for the research. I sat in on a homicide trial, domestic violence homicide trial.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. I sat in on court mandated sessions with offenders, which was very interesting, because I wanted to be able to know from the offender side. I wanted to get inside of their mind. What are you thinking? What is your process with this? And then I visited shelters, spoke with counselors. I spoke with, the intake representatives, the hotline representatives. I sat with them, read the questionnaires, and did all of that. So I just really wanted to be thorough in the research so that I could be authentic to what it really looks like.
Yeah, it is. And it's at times it's so true to life that it feels almost uncomfortable and disturbing to watch, because it's you don't feel like you're watching a film. You feel like you're watching these people's lives, and this is real. This is really happening.
Yeah, we've actually gotten that quite a bit. Either people will tell us that they were talking to their screens, and when we were able to screen in the movie theaters, every single time people were like yelling at the screen and talking to the screen because these characters were so real.
Yeah,
it was like you're the fly on the wall.
Yes.
Yeah.
It really felt like that. And there are a couple of scenes that really, stood out to me there. There was a scene earlier on where Elizabeth's making Michael dinner, and there's something about the way that he's speaking to her. It put me really on edge, and it made me so uncomfortable and afraid of what was going to happen next. And it does feel like you're peeking into these people's lives and watching what's going on. And it was just so well done. One thing that struck me as well is that one of the couples, the abuse is very physical and very obvious and physically scarring. And the other type of abuse that we see mentioned is emotional and verbal and mental and kind of a little bit like gaslighting. Why was it important to show the non-physical violence? Because when we think of intimate partner violence, we think of the physical side. Why was it important to show the other side as well?
For a couple of reasons. For one, I didn't know that abuse existed without the physical part of it before I did my research. I just didn't know.
Right.
So in my research, I started to understand, this coercive control and this power, because, at its core, that's what abuse is, power and control. And so I thought it was really important to also include that in the film, where it's not all physical. And so many people are in these types of relationships because it's like, well, he hasn't hit me or she hasn't hit me. And so it's not abuse. I'm just, just like Elizabeth, there's a line, I don't know what it is. I'm just not happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and of course, in relationships, there are those times where you're just not happy. It doesn't mean that you're being abused, but I did want to show that side where it is that coercive control, and people just don't understand how dangerous that is also.
And I know we've touched on this briefly, but why was it important specifically to focus on domestic violence as a topic? That there are obviously lots of different ways to talk about this and to educate people about it. There's a really beautiful moment in the film where there's actually some information given about how to leave a relationship like this. So was that is this a bit more of a stealth way, perhaps, of educating people about how to leave these relationships rather than it being on a billboard or calling a hotline?
Yeah. So my executive producer, Tracy, is the one who actually reached out to me. And she was at the time sitting as the chair on the board of our local women's shelter. And they had been, going on and on about, how can we spread awareness? Because these women who are dying at the hands of their abuser, they've never called the shelter. Do they not know? Do they not know how to escape? Do they not know they were in danger? So how can we, on a large scale, spread awareness? And she thought, I know a filmmaker.
Yeah. And
and we barely knew each other. I'd used her house in one of my previous films. I just found her on Zillow and called her. So she called me and she said, hey, would you be interested in doing a film? You take care of the script. I don't care. Like, as long as it's authentic, I don't care about your characters or what you write, and I'll put some funding together. And I said, well, yeah. So it started as this would be our topic. But the way that I did it, we didn't want to do a documentary because I think that would be really hard to watch. It's been done and it's been done very well. But for me, I wanted to do something different, and Tracy as well. And so I wanted to make something that people could watch and enjoy, as a film. But also when you walk away, you want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And so that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to preach to people or, really just drive this point. Just, like you said, a stealth way to say, this is a movie, these are relationships, and it's kind of thrilling and intense and all of these things. But also, when you walk away, you should have a better understanding of really what this is.
And you mentioned, there's a couple of things that I want to pick up on. You mentioned the types of conversations you want people to be having after this film. What conversations are starting to happen, and are they the types of conversations you wanted to happen?
Oh, absolutely. So on so many different levels. So for one, I think the most important, we've had domestic violence advocates and experts come and say, this is it. We've seen these different movies and none of them are really showing what this thing is. And so, and we've spoken at summits all over because of this film. So that's one of the conversations. This is a new way to get this message out, and it's working. Another is from survivors, and they're saying, thank you. Now I can show people this is why I didn't leave.
Yeah.
Thank you for showing my story, even though it wasn't mine, but thank you for, doing this thing where people can kind of understand. And more importantly, we've had people say, okay, what can I do? I did not know, and now I know. So that's step one. We wanted you to know what it really looks like. For yourself and for others, for your family, for your friends, if you see some things, but also, so that you can talk about it, especially men. Honestly, we want the men to walk away and say, okay, what is my role in this? What can I do? Who can I talk to? I want to talk to my friends. I want to talk to my family. I want to make sure that, we know that abuse is not just men on women.
Right.
But we know that the violent abuse is usually men on women.
Right.
And we know that they're saying globally 1 in 3 women will experience this type of intimate partner violence in their lifetime. And we know it's probably more than that because everyone's not reporting because everyone doesn't know. So that means it's either you or a family member or a friend, someone is going through this, whether you know they are or not. And so these are the conversations. Okay, I see some signs here. Okay, now I know if this is me, I know that I need an escape plan. I know that I need to do this and do that. And, I shouldn't dismiss it. Or I don't think it's dangerous, but wow, this could turn dangerous if this person loses control.
Yeah.
So these are the conversations that we wanted to happen, and this is what's happening. We're talking about it.
Yeah. It's amazing that it's had to have that ripple effect, and now that's only going to increase. I'm going to share something that I've never shared before with my audience. This is going to be new. In the home I grew up in, it was a semi-detached home, so it was like 2 homes split in half, if you will, sharing a wall, partition wall. And the couple next door, he was violent and abusive towards his wife. And whenever I go back and see my mother, who's still in that home, he still is. And we heard it growing up, and we talked about it, and I'm so ashamed to say we never did anything. We didn't know what to do. And so this is, growing up in England in the kind of 80s and 90s, we knew it was happening. We didn't say anything. We talked to them over the fence like everything was fine, and we didn't know what to do. So thankfully, you're coming out with this movie now where it's going to let people know, like you say, here are the signs, here's what to look out for, and here's where to go if you need that help.
Yeah. And most importantly, if you do know someone in that situation, you see in the movie also, it's not up to you to say, you need to leave and I'm going to make the phone call. And, it's just, hey, I believe that it's happening. I believe you. I'm here for you. You let me know. Here are some resources, and so that's something definitely that we wanted to do with the film as well. Like nobody talks about it. Yeah. Because it's our family's dirty little secret. We don't air our dirty laundry. That's what we were taught growing up. That is your family's business. That is no one else's business. So what happens in the home stays in the home. And that's unfortunate because people are losing their lives behind it.
Yeah. It's interesting that you bring up family, Chyna, because I noticed some family patterns in Pastor Michael and then his father. It seems like I was kind of picking up on perhaps him not having the best upbringing as well. Why was it important to flag that and to perhaps to suggest that sometimes these patterns do run in the family, which doesn't justify it, but to give perhaps some context to what's happening? Why was that an important decision?
Well, that was important to me because, for one, I wanted to humanize the ones who were the abusers, because if I just made them into monsters right off, then the story wouldn't have been believable.
Right.
So I wanted to give them a backstory also. Even though the movie wasn't about them, I wanted them to have a backstory. Where is it coming from? Why? And I wanted to show that if you're brought up in this home under this type of control and this type of power in your household, you think it's okay.
Right.
And so what his father did no one ever told him that it was not okay. And so this is now how he's operating. Operating to his father's approval and to what he saw growing up. And so his teenage son, who does his teenage son want to be like? His dad. Most boys want to be like their dad, you know? And so we actually had to cut some scenes for the sake of time, but there are a couple of scenes where the teenage son started to talk to his mother the way that the father was talking to her as well. So we see this generational thing happening. If no one checks it, it's going to keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting to me too that there was a definite power dynamic at play, in that one of the men was a pastor at the church and was very well respected in his community, and one of the men was a police officer, and there's some conversation about how do you call the police on the police. So why was that an important consideration, to show that these women also had a power struggle and a community perception to deal with as well?
Because sometimes that's just the reality of it. Like, what do you do if, you know, your husband is a pastor over a church? There's a whole congregation that looks toward him for leadership. The community is like, he's a pastor, he can't be abusive, you know? And it's like, yeah, and he's so charming, he's so great with us, how could he ever? And then you're living, especially in the church, you're a first lady. So you have to send your representative to church, no matter how you're feeling. You have to show up and you have to support your pastor, you know, no matter what's going on at home. So I thought that was interesting, especially Tracy and I are both in the Bible Belt, and her experience was with spiritual abuse. And so it was really, you know, a nod to her also and her experience to show. And then who believes you? Yeah. Like that's, you know, that's a really big deal. And this is the same for physicians and, you know, other people that the community look up to. Well, he's the greatest pediatrician to my child. He cannot possibly, he gives them lollipops every time they, you know. And so you never know what's going on behind closed doors, no matter who that person is. So I thought it was important to say, okay, if we're talking spiritual abuse and we're talking, you know, coercive control and nonviolent abuse, who can I go to? What can I make this character be that, I mean, would make it the hardest to believe? A pastor. And we see a lot of it here in Texas, you know, and in the Bible Belt in the United States. So there's that. The police officer, honestly, that just came from research. The top 3 professions of abusers, police officers are in the top 3.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yep. Pilots, physicians, and police officers. And with the police officer, I was able to introduce weapons in the home. So that's why I chose the police officer. Yeah, it was really, really well done. What else was I going to ask about that? I suppose one of the sad things for me was with Tanya and Derek, how you see there's so much love in the beginning and they're so in love, and it was so heart-wrenching. I can feel myself getting emotional now watching it. It was so heart-wrenching and heartbreaking to see how that disintegrated and did so quite quickly. That seemed like an important consideration too. You mentioned that earlier, that it was important to show both sides of this. It's not bad all the time. But how have audiences been responding to that? Have they been responding the same way I am? We're feeling very emotional about it, or did they really connect to that couple particularly? Well, yeah, they, you know, Michael was kind of, the pastor was, it was easy to see that, oh, he's kind of slimy, you know.
He wasn't very likable. He was the villain.
He wasn't very likable.
Yeah.
But Derek and Tanya, the audiences, some of them have actually been like, oh, I was rooting for them. I'm cheering for them. I want them to get. And I said, now, imagine if you're in that relationship. Yeah. If you're Tanya, we're just watching. Tanya's invested in this relationship. She's in love with this man. So she wants it to make it more than we do. So if we're rooting for them, she's definitely rooting for them. Yeah. And so it was very important for me to show that it is not easy. It is very complex because, like you said, there are moments like on the dance floor and, you know, they're the gifts and you can look in her eyes and her face. And Deanna Davis did such an amazing job playing Tanya. Yeah. you can see that there is love, like genuine love from both sides, honestly.
Yeah.
And that's why we're rooting for them, because he does love her,
Yeah.
except he doesn't know how to love her correctly.
Right. Yeah.
And that's really what it comes down to. So I thought that was very important to make our audience like be so invested in them.
Yeah.
And then see how that can happen.
Yeah. Now, Tanya's sister, my heroine of the movie, really, I loved her. Now, I loved her so much. She's amazing. There's a line that she says, and I wanted to just reflect this line back to you and just ask some questions. She says, "Hey, promising to be a good husband doesn't make him a good husband any more than pouring syrup on me makes me a pancake." Now, I laughed out loud, and that was at a point in the movie when I'd been crying, so I appreciated the humor. But why was it important to put something like that in that was so funny and so real? Because it's not all dark, and it's not all about the abusive relationship. Why was it important to pepper that in?
Because, for one, for the audience, like you said, you need a breath sometimes, right. Or you need like a really hearty laugh, like out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And so it's been great that the audience is able to just like really release and laugh in that moment. Because it is heavy, around that time, especially in the film. And so you need that laugh. But also that's kind of life.
Yeah.
If you're in this relationship, it's not all bad all the time. There are moments like the date night, like the singing in the kitchen, like this moment with her sister where they're just, laughing in the car. That's real life.
Yeah.
And I wanted them to say, okay, I have had this moment where everything was just crashing down and I just got with the right person and we just laughed.
Yeah.
You just need that breath.
Yeah, absolutely. I love Tanya so much. She's brilliant. And there's something she says a little earlier on in the film where she says, "I just can't figure out what I did to change him so much." And she talks about how, those gentle hands that kind of made love to me, that taught me how to play the piano, they're the same hands that hurt me now. What did I do to change him? Mm-hmm. Is that something that came out through talking to survivors of abuse and violence, that they thought it was something they did?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was not only were they asking themselves, what did I do to change this? They were also asking, what can I do to fix it?
Right.
And it's not your fault. If you're in this type of relationship, it's not your fault. It's nothing that you did, and it's not something that you can fix, because it's not just an anger problem, or it's not just them losing their temper, because they don't lose their temper with everyone. They're not in jail for like public assaults on different people and things like that. They're choosing, where to exert this power or control. And so for me, it was important to put that in there just as a nod to survivors, to where it's like, we understand. You're thinking, okay, let me go back in my mind because I don't understand where this happened. He's so great, or she's so great, So was it something that I did? I know sometimes my attitude gets the best of me. Sometimes I'm a little snarky or, whatever. So that if I fix that, ... And so I thought it was really important to show that thought process in the film.
And we see both women being very hypervigilant in their homes and trying not to kind of set their partner off. And that also felt very real too. I could empathize. I've never been in a relationship like that myself, but I could empathize with being in that situation, saying, okay, if I can fix it, then that means I need to just be really vigilant about my behavior and about what I'm saying, so that he doesn't do whatever he's going to do. I'm curious, obviously with my work as a relationship expert, I do help people with their relationships and dating the wrong ones, but I really don't go into the abusive relationships and domestic violence. That's more of a counselling or a therapy issue. But what did you find in your research? Why is it that partners are violent towards their significant other? What is it that psychologically is behind that?
There are so many reasons. But like I said, it's just for whatever reason, they need that power and that control. And that's really at the base of it. When they go home, they need to, have this control. And if they lose control, that's when usually that abuse happens. But if they're feeling like, for Derek, if he's having something going on at his job, and he doesn't have control of that situation. He needs to come home and be in control of something. He needs to have power over something. As a worker, you don't have power over what happens at your job. You know, you're going, you have a job to do, and that's it. And, you know, whatever's going on there. But when you come home, you need to, you know, not you need to, they're choosing, you know, to come home and, like I said, exert that power at home in whatever form. And so, you know, there are 1,000 reasons why we can see a relationship going in this direction. Some of it is cultural, some of it in generational, and you know, like I said, in the pastor's household, it wasn't physical. It was just that hierarchy in the home, and it needs to be this way because that's how my father did it, and probably his father and his father, you know, so forth. And so this is the way that it should be. And so for those abusers that are physically abusing, you know, I don't care what you grew up seeing, you know that it's not right.
Yeah.
You know, and so there's not a reason for that. It's just that you want to feel that power for whatever selfish reason. You need to feel that power, and you have to have that control over your partner at home, or, you know, as we've seen way too much of in college or in high school. So maybe not even at home, but in that relationship, you know, it starts so young. So they're seeing this in movies and in their homes and in their friends' homes, and they're thinking, oh, I like how this person has control, and they're kind of running, and I want that. I want that control. I'm greedy for that control. And so that's how it turns into this other thing.
And so for those people that are watching this that haven't seen No Ordinary Love yet, where can they go and stream it? Where can they see it? Where can they support you?
Thank you. They can actually go to our website, which is just noordinarylovemovie.com. So we're showing on so many different platforms in different countries. We're worldwide now, so that's fantastic. We have people watching everywhere, but definitely, like, you know, the Amazons, the iTunes, so many different platforms. There are probably 15 to 20 different platforms, but they're all on our website.
And the website is noordinarylove.com.
noordinarylovemovie.com.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying. Thank you so much. I'll make sure I put that in the description below of the video too. So you've had a very, this is a very profound movie and very impactful. What's next for you? Is there something a little bit lighter? Are you going to continue the theme of love? What's next?
Yes. I am actually doing a love story in the fall. And this one is quite different. It's actually kind of the answer to our perception of what a relationship should be. With, you know, I was raised on Disney movies. I wanted my prince on my white horse and my happily ever after. And it wasn't until I got married where I realized, okay, wait, this happily ever after doesn't look like this one. It's not this easy. And, you know, there's so many steps and things that we need to do and trials we have to go through. And so I really wanted to take a look inside of a real relationship, the ups and downs. And in the end, it's about the love in that relationship. And so we take this couple at 3 stages in their lives. And so that's what I'm working on. It's a really, I think it's just really necessary for us to have the conversation. Like, we need to stop teaching our kids that this is the happily ever after, and this is how it looks and feels, and it's amazing and wonderful and beautiful every day. And, you know, someday my prince will come, you know, type of deal. So that's what I'm working on. And then right after that, I'll be hopping into a sci-fi fantasy film.
Oh, that's a different genre and a different direction, but one that I love. So that's exciting.
Yes. I did stage before film, and I've done every type of production you can probably think of. And I'm not tied to one genre. So I'm all over the place, and I love it all.
What genre haven't you tried that you would love to get into?
You know, the only one that I haven't really done, other than the sci-fi, like, I'm really excited about doing that one, the sci-fi and fantasy type deal, because I want to make that movie that people look back and say, oh gosh, I watched this when I was 12 and it was like amazing, and I'm still watching it and I'm 60. That movie.
Yeah.
The only one that I haven't done, and I don't know that I'll ever do, is horror, because I'm really scary. So I don't know. Like, I've done a thriller, but that's probably as close as I will come to horror. I don't know. I just carry it all with me. Again, no tears in the reader or writer, no tears in the reader. So I feel all of that, and I'm scary. So I think that's the only thing that I have not done.
That's so interesting. I think horror is the only genre I don't really enjoy, because I get spooked really easily and it kind of stays with me and I can't sleep. And anytime something's moving around at night, I get a bit jumpy. So yeah, I that's okay if you're not doing a horror. I think that's going to be all good. But the film you mentioned, and I don't want to kind of spoil too much because I know that you're working on it, but what stage of production are you at with the love story that you're working on? Are you in pre-production? Are you writing? Are you filming?
The script is completely done. We're into casting and locations right now. So it will be happening in September.
Amazing. I'm so excited to hear more about that. I know it's going to be a really beautiful story, and definitely in contrast to No Ordinary Love, definitely a different tone and a different vibe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love No Ordinary Love. Like I said, I've been all over the place. This one's historical drama. This one's, romantic thriller, I guess, if you can call that. The love story is coming. It's very artsy, sci-fi fantasy. So I'm excited about what's next.
Amazing. I'm excited to see what's next for you too, and to really follow your journey. So thank you so much for being here. I'm going to finish off with 2 real questions, if I may, about love and relationships. Okay. And the first one is, how would you define a healthy, happy relationship?
I would say communication and understanding is very important. And I say that because these are things that even in my own relationships were very, very important and are very important to me. Communication, being able to be open with the other person and having the understanding whether you agree or not, but just to give that person the respect of trying to understand where they're coming from. So I think that's very important.
I love that. Yeah. And what does love mean to you? What is love?
I've been thinking. I don't know. I think for me, love is careful. Because I think it's just, if you really love someone and really care for that person, you do have to be careful of their feelings. And that doesn't mean walk on eggshells. That doesn't mean suppress your own opinions or feelings or anything like that, but just being careful with people's heart. I think that's very important.
Love is careful.
Love is careful.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. And just as a quick wrap up, we know where people can find and stream No Ordinary Love, which is noordinarylovemovie.com. Where can they find you on social media?
I am at Chyna Writes everywhere. So CHYNA and then Writes. So WRITES on Twitter and Instagram. And then Facebook, it's just my name, Chyna Butler Robinson is on Facebook. So they can see what I'm up to on those platforms.
That's amazing. Chyna, thank you so much for being on Real Relationships. It's been such a pleasure to talk with you.
Yes, the pleasure is mine. Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for watching Season 1, Episode 1 of Real Relationships. I really appreciate you being here. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe and ring the bell for notifications. You will be notified when our next episode drops. We have some really exciting guests coming up and some very, very juicy topics. I'd also love to know in the comments below, what did you really take away from this conversation? This is an important topic in terms of intimate partner violence and abusive relationships. It's a topic that I don't really cover in my work, so it is something that I wanted to bring here. So what did you take away from the conversation? And let me know what you thought of the film, spoiler free, down in the comments below. Thank you for watching Real Relationships, and I will see you next time.